to prayer and pose. Put on your favorite music and let's start to breathe. We're gonna do an equal racial breath today, which means we're gonna work to make our inhale and our exhale the same length. We're gonna breathe deeply, so let's inhale for a count of 5, exhale for a count of 5, lengthening the breath, equalizing the breath, and drawing a deep diaphragmatic breath. There are a lot of reasons that we start our practice with breath work. One of them is that it's so good for our lymphatic system. There's a gentleman named Jack Shields. He's a lymphologist and a doctor out of Santa Barbara, California, and he wanted to know the effects of breath, so he put some cameras in the body, and he learned that the lymphatic system is able to push out toxins by this vacuum effect that's created when we breathe diaphragmically. And it pushes the toxins out at 15 times the rate of normal breathing. So this breath work that we do is really important. Continue to breathe as I talk about Psalm 23. Verse 1 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I was preparing these lessons in the middle of December. Christmas shopping, I love giving gifts. And I was shopping online in the stores, but I kept noticing that I would come across things that I wanted for me. And because I was listening to, reading, and reciting to myself Psalm 23 multiple times a day as I prep for these lessons, I would see something I wanted, and then immediately that verse would come to me, "I shall not want." And I began to realize that I had some issues with discontent. And I think we all do. I'm sure that there's been other years, probably every year, that the same thing happens. But it was the first time that it really brought me to a place of conviction. So I developed this little habit when I saw something that I wanted and I heard "I shall not want," I would just kind of tell myself, "Kathy, your shepherd is enough." And I'd walk away. It's not just material things, is it, though, that bring us to this place of discontent. Sometimes it's just where we are in life. There's a Chinese proverb that says, people in the West are always preparing to live. And it's true. We're always talking about when I grow up, or when I get a different job, when I make more money, when I retire. So I'd like to encourage us to think today about that verse, "I shall not want," where it is that we're discontent, where we're living like we're just not happy with where God placed us or with what we have, and just thinking about what we have in our shepherd, pausing to take those deep breaths like we're doing right now, but doing it in our regular life, centering ourselves back to what we do have in our shepherd. Let's take a couple more breaths here, equalizing that breath. Now this is a breath that I want us to take with us through our whole practice today. It's particularly helpful in our balancing poses, which are challenging, but so good for us. And now let's take those legs, widening them to bring the outside edge to the edge of our mat. Then we're just gonna drop them right to left, bent knee, loosening up the hips a little bit here. And then let's extend our left foot into the air, giving a little twist to that ankle, switching directions. We can draw that knee in towards the chest, extending it again. And then we're gonna make little circles in the ball and socket of the hip and switching directions. We can cross that leg over the other side, gentle press, not right on the knee, just below it. And then let's draw this towards us, sending it back away, drawing it towards us, sending it back away. We can return that right foot to the mat. Let's lift that left foot, giving a twist to the ankle, switching directions, hugging that knee towards the chest, extending that back up nice and long, and then giving us some circles in the ball and socket of the hip, switching directions, crossing that over the other side. Foot is flexed to protect the tissues of the knees. Give a gentle press away. Inhale, and then on an exhale, we draw this towards us. Just opening up the hip gently as we warm up. And we'll bring both knees to chest, rocking and rolling over, coming into our first child's pose, our first opportunity for prayer. 1 Timothy 6:6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. So when we're content and we choose to say, I shall not want, we're not just giving up things, we're gaining something. And what we gain here is gratitude. So let's start with a prayer of thanksgiving, thanking God for where we are, what we have, maybe even thanking Him for what we don't have, knowing that He has our best interests at heart. And let's come up to a plank just to set ourselves up to shift back to down dog. We're going to inhale, bending the knees. Exhale, straightening, bending the knees, straightening. Your heels might not come to the mat. That's okay. With time and patience, we can get more flexibility back there. But at the same time, we want to be respectful of that Achilles tendon. It's the largest and strongest spring of the body. And that tension is actually functional, giving us that energy and strength that we need for things like jumping. All right, let's settle back into this down dog. We want the fingers spread wide and out with the thumb and the first finger. Make sure you feel nice and stable on that left leg. And then we're going to lift the right leg, putting a little bend into the knee. Twist here with the ankle once more. And then while we keep that left hip down, we're going to open up the right, feeling a little stretch in the hip flexor here. And we can come back down. Let's draw that knee towards the chest and then extend the leg out long. While we draw forward, we're trying to bring that body to a position where we're parallel to the ground. And then extending out to that nice long line in that three-legged down dog. Breathing. One movement, one breath. And we can drop that leg down. Let's drop back to our knees, sinking back once more into child's pose for a time of prayer of adoration. Adoration is different than thanksgiving because it's praising God for who He is, for being our shepherd, for being truly good. Aren't you thankful that He knows all the things that we don't? There's a word for all-knowing called omniscient. And God is. So when we don't understand, we can trust that He sees things that we don't. And because He's a loving God, we can trust Him. Coming back into plank, just to shift back once more to down dog. Tailbone floating up. Stabilizing on that right foot, we lift the left. Putting that bend in the knee. Opening up to feel a good stretch in that hip flexor. Returning to neutral, knee drives. Knee forward and extending back. Flattening out the back to be as parallel as it feel like we can as we come down. And then extending and lifting back. One movement, one breath. Keeping a flexed foot here. And then we can replace that foot back down. Let's walk those feet forward. Coming to the front of our mat. Bringing those feet right underneath of the hips, soft knees, inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. Let's come into mountain here. Starting from the bottom up, establishing a foundation by pressing our feet in towards the mat. We've got a nice soft knee, lifting up with the quadriceps.
Bringing our pelvis to a place of neutral. Shoulders are not up by the ears. We're letting them be back and down. We've got our palms forward, head lifted. Breathing. Mountain is a really important pose because so often when we stand through the day, we're not standing with good posture. And the more often we practice mountain on our mats, the more likely we are to notice when we're not exercising good posture through our day. Let's inhale up, exhaling forward fold, stepping back with that right foot, coming into a nice lunge where we've got the knee over the heel, taking our arms up, overhead, reaching up with the right, feeling some length down the spine. We're keeping that reach directly over the shoulder. We're not leaning to the side. And then releasing back down, other side, inhaling up, exhaling down, bringing that rib cage to neutral. Our rear heel is lifted. If we press into that front foot, we can maybe get a little bit of core engagement here. But our primary focus is on that space that's being created down the side of the spine. Breathing and reaching. Now we're going to take both hands together, lifting, getting some lateral expansion just to the left. If you're comfortable, you can take your gaze to the right, inhaling, exhaling. And bringing our hands back centered, let's open them up into a V, warming the spine through some rotation. Big inhale here in our V, and we exhale, rotating the belly button behind us, followed by the chest and the head, reaching up, rotating behind. Anytime we lift those arms, we're not just putting them in the air, we're reaching. One movement, one breath. Feeling the strength of the legs, mobility of the spine. And then we can draw our hands back to the mat, stepping up that right foot, stepping back with the left, coming back into lunge. This time on the other side, bringing those arms overhead. We've got the knee over that front heel. If we're able, if that causes you knee pain, come back just a little bit off of that. We're gonna alternate again, reaching directly over the shoulder and releasing, reaching and releasing, inhaling up, exhaling, we release. We'll take our hands together, drawing them over towards the same side as our bent leg, maybe taking our gaze in the opposite direction. Noticing the length being created between the vertebrae down the side. Coming back center, opening up to that generous V and rotating. Inhaling up to that V, woo, rotating back. Anytime that you're feeling a little wobbly in your knees and your feet, that's a great sign. Means that what we're doing is working those ankles to build some stability. As we rotate here, continuing with our spinal warm-up, we're starting with the belly button, keeping those hips forward, followed by the chest and then the head. We can come back to neutral here. Let's draw those hands back down to the mat, stepping up with the left foot, inhaling up, exhaling chair, either the arms forward or heart center, your choice. Finding the strength of the legs, putting all of our weight onto the heels, maybe even lifting the toes, and then putting them back down. You can elevate those arms even higher to bring them by the ears if that doesn't hurt. Pushing the hips back. And let's bring those hands back to heart center. We're going to come into flying bird to get some extension and flexion of the spine. Stepping back with that right foot. Opening up nice and wide. Let's give a twist to the wrists, waking them up, switching directions. Really feel this chest open, lengthening, creating space at the front of the spine, gaze high. And then we're gonna reverse this. Giving yourself a big hug, creating space at the back of the spine. Stepping back with the other side, opening again and closing. As we step back and open the chest, that's where we've got the belly exposed. It's a good place for that inhale. And then as we close everything back off, flexing the spine, that's where we're gonna exhale. Where is our gaze? As we come into each part of this pose, just notice. A lot of yoga is just noticing, breathing, making sure that we feel this somewhere. And we do want to be coming deeply enough into each of these asanas that we feel something in the spine. And now we can come back center. Let's inhale up, exhaling forward fold, stepping the feet back into plank. Hands directly underneath the shoulders. We want a nice, strong, stable shoulder girdle here. We want to make sure that we're not putting demands on it by shooting those hands way out in front of us. We want to be in alignment here. If this is too difficult, we can always come to the knee, creating a straight line from the shoulder down to the knee, holding the movement, never holding the breath, breathing. Gravity is pulling that whole back body down. Our abdominal muscles are stabilizing us. And then we can drop the knees. Let's come up onto our left knee, coming into a modified plank, dropping that left arm down, bringing the right arm overhead. Now notice what's going on in the body here. We want to make sure that we don't have the shoulder shoved into the head, really lengthen here. And then what's going on with our hip flexor? Are we sitting back a little bit, or are we able to open? This might be an opportunity to use a block. Some of us have shorter arms and we're just not able to really open up that hip flexor. The block is not something for just a beginner. Sometimes it can help us move into a pose that we're just not able to do yet, but other times it helps us move into a pose because of our own body mechanics, or if we just want to feel a pose differently. Blocks are helpful for lots of reasons. Don't shy away from them. Now, as we're in this, we're reaching up with this hand, and now we do want to have our toes up behind us for a little bit of support here. We're going to shift into gate, drawing that left arm overhead, feeling even more of that lateral flexion down the side of the spine, taking our gaze high, breathing, really reaching far enough that we can feel this breath in the spine, creating space between all those vertebrae. We're reaching towards the corner of the room. Now let's start to cartwheel our arms without putting any pressure on the floor. I'm actually going to use this block just as kind of a guide. Coming down and up, windmilling the arms, but using the muscles of the core to do this. So as we come down, we're not putting our weight on the floor. We're making the core do all the work here. And now let's come back into plank, hands underneath of the shoulders, legs behind us, or knees to the mat. Our feet are about 10 inches apart here. Holding the movement, never holding the breath. We want to make sure that we're not putting all of the pressure into the base of the wrist by pressing those fingertips into the mat also. Head lengthening forward. Not letting our abdominals sag. Taking that option if we need to drop to the knees. And then we'll come onto that right knee, up on the toes. Coming into that side plank again, a modified side plank. Once again, making sure that we're lifting that shoulder out of the neck and that we're not pushing the glutes back. My arm is feeling a little short. So to be able to open that hip flexor and using the block so that I can open that rear hip flexor up, reaching with the hand. Our arm isn't just lifted, it's reaching. If this bothers your shoulder, You can let it just lie at the side. Always moving from a place where we feel a stretch or a rotation or whatever we're supposed to feel, but that thing is never pain. Pain is our signal to back off. Let's shift into gate, drawing that right arm overhead, breathing and reaching, lifted, openness down the side of the spine, gaze is high. If we're feeling this in the front or the back of the spine instead of the side, then we probably need to take our torso and bring it to be parallel with that long edge of the mat. And now we can come into that flow, inhaling up, exhaling as we drop below. As we come to the top of this, there's an intention here of being sure that we finish that move. We're really reaching towards the corner of the room, making sure that we're not leaning into the floor of the block, but that we're making the core do all of the work here. And now let's come back to all fours. We can kick that block out of the way. We're going to take our hands over to the right, drawing the left foot up, framing it, pushing off, inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. Inhale up, exhaling forward fold. Then we're going to take that right foot stepping way back, opening nice and wide, walking ourselves to the long edge of the mat. Let's drop down to a straddle, all four corners of each foot down, trying not to lean either to the right or to the left, hinging from the hips. Let's place our left hand down, drawing our right arm up into a little rotation here. Breathing, reaching. And we can switch this, taking the right hand down, drawing the left up. And taking that hand back down, let's turn those toes slightly out, putting a little bend into our legs here, walking ourselves up, coming into just kind of a prayer squat here, making sure the shoulders are down away from the ears. Then if you take a peek here, you want to make sure that your knees are pointing towards the toes. If they're not, then you just need to adjust the heels. Maybe we need to come in, maybe we need to come out a little further. Do whatever we need to do here to try to get those knees to point to the toes. Now we're going to turn towards the left of the mat, or back towards the front. We're going to take our arms overhead into a lunge. Then we're going to drop the hands down, dropping that rear heel. All 10 toes face the front of the mat in pyramid. Then we're going to take our left arm forward, drawing that right arm overhead, balancing half moon, flex foot, dropping everything back down to a place of support. And then again, lifting into lunge. Coming back to prayer squat center, moving to the other side, coming into lunge. Taking our hands down, shifting that rear heel, like standing on train tracks for pyramid, then bringing our right arm to the mat, lifting the left overhead, opening up the torso to the side, flexed foot, balancing half moon, taking both hands back down to the mat, settling into that strength of the lunge, and coming back center, prayer squat. Let's repeat that in a moon salutation, taking the arms overhead in a lunge, dropping down to pyramid, shifting into balancing half moon, dropping down the hands and leg for support, and lifting into lunge, coming back to prayer squat, other side, lunge, pyramid, balancing half moon, and then can bring everything down to a place of support, Coming back into lunge. Returning to prayer squat. Let's turn back towards the front of our mat. Taking the hands back down to the mat. Coming back into lunge, but this time a nice low lunge. We want to feel a good stretch in the hip flexor. We want our front knee to be over the heel. If we're comfortable, we can draw our arms overhead. Let's make sure that our torso isn't leaning into that front leg, but that we're nice and tall here. And then we can come into a back extension here, taking our gaze high. If this bothers the shoulders, we can open up to cactus arms. Squeezing those shoulder blades together, gaze is high, breathing. Pressing that front foot into the mat, still feeling that stretch in the rear hip flexor. Then let's take those hands together, lifting the elbows, moving from the belly button into a rotation over this lunge. When we're in twists, we are detoxifying the body. It's gonna wring out all the abdominal organs, but let's just think about how we're cleaning our liver right now. I could list off all kinds of organs in the abdominal region that we are helping right now, but I don't think we'd remember anything. So let's just think about the fact that we're getting a healthy liver right now in this twist. Coming back center, taking our hands to the mat, lifting back into pyramid. All 10 toes facing the front of the mat. The abdominals and the head are just resting. Now, maybe we're not able to bring the hands to the floor. That's okay. We can bring them to the calf or to the ankle. If you'd like, we can grab some blocks. And if you'd like to advance this, because the toes are all facing forward, there's some balance involved. So we can make that more challenging by making some fists, bringing them to the sacrum. But we want to feel this openness down the back of the legs, heels towards the mat, soft knees, don't want to lock them out, head hanging down relaxed. There's a complete surrender of the upper body, good stretch in the lower body. Now gently lifting the head, starting to move all of our weight onto that left foot. Let's use a block for our balancing half move this time. We're going to take that left hand to the block, opening up to the side of the room. So we've got our torso open to that long edge of the mat. We're reaching up with our right arm. We've got a flexed foot on that left leg. The right leg. Left, right. Hard stuff. Breathing. Trying to bring that lifted ankle in line with the hip, bringing it parallel to the floor as best as we can. We're always working from where we are. Breathing and reaching upward. Now we can drop that down, stepping up that right leg, inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. Taking a breath here, getting ready to move into a little more balance work with some warrior three. We're going to stabilize on the left leg, drawing up the right knee. Now maybe we want to stay right here. We're still going to get all the benefits that come from just balancing on one leg. But if we'd like to move into warrior three, we can push that leg behind us, bringing our body to a parallel line from the floor. Maybe this feels hard. Maybe we can grab some blocks. That's okay. Maybe this feels easy and we'd like to draw our arms overhead. Wherever we are in this warrior three pose, balancing poses are going to help keep us from falling by strengthening not just the muscles but the tendons and ligaments, which means that even if we do fall, we're less likely to be hurt or to be hurt as badly. Let's drop that leg back down. And coming into a forward fold. If you've got a block, you can ease that out of the way. We're gonna step that left leg way back, coming back into that low lunge. Lifting again, make sure we've got the knee over the heel, taking our arms overhead, coming back into that back extension, little back bend here. Remembering our option to open up to cactus arms if that feels better. Pressing that front foot into the mat, feeling an openness in our rear hip flexor. Inhaling, exhaling. Let's still try to do our equal ratio breath here. And we're going to take our hands to heart center, keeping the hips forward, moving from the belly button as we rotate behind us. Squeezing and detoxifying the liver. Breathing. We can come back center, taking those hands back to the mat, pushing off with that rear leg, coming back into pyramid, soft knee. We're not locking the knee out here. Head hanging down, mine's lifted because I'm talking. But custom abdominals resting on that front leg. We can bring the hands to the calf, the ankle, the floor, or to blocks. We've got that option to make fists, bringing them behind us to the sacrum. Finding an openness in the back of the legs. Breathing. Let's take that block for some stability, moving into our standing half moon. Lifting the left leg, reaching up with the left arm, gaze and torso forward. Trying to bring that ankle in line with the hip of that lifted leg. Noticing, accepting, and even being thankful for any wobbliness as a balance, because this means we're working it, we're getting better at it. And we can drop that leg down, getting those blocks nearby, because you may need them as we move back into Warrior 3. Inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. We're stabilizing on that right foot, drawing up the left knee. Foot is flexed, choosing either to stay here or pushing that leg back. Bringing the body to be parallel to the floor. Choosing either to draw the arms in front of us. Maybe coming down with some blocks to modify, taking the hands to heart center, your choice. Wherever we are today. Warrior 3 uses all the mechanisms of balance. We've got 3 systems in the body that affect our balance. The visual, the proprioceptive, which is how we move in space, like why we don't have to look at each foot as we walk. There's a lot going on in Warrior 3 with our balance that's in the ears. Inside of the ear, there's these bony tunnels filled with fluid. And as we shift in and out of a pose like Warrior 3, that fluid is shifting, hitting the little hairs in the ear, which is going to activate the nerves and send the message to the brain for balance. And we can release this. Oh, that was a big release. Release gently. Go ahead and let yourself hang down here for a second in a forward fold. Let that head relax. If you need to, you can push those blocks out of the way. And then let's drop down to the mat, coming onto our belly. Let's come into Sphinx. We've got the elbows right underneath of the shoulders, taking the hands and the forearms, pressing them into the mat, making sure that our ankles are in line with the hips, lifting, bringing our heart forward. We have an option here, if you like a bigger stretch, to press those hands into the mat, lifting into seal, keeping the shoulders out of the ears. Maybe while we're reading Psalm 23 and we look at this, I shall not want, we think to ourselves, Yeah, easy for you to say David the king in your palace. And this was probably written towards the end of his life because it's written to someone who's looking back at a lot of experiences. But David did know what it meant to want something he didn't have. He was anointed to be king as a teenager, but it was 10 to 15 years before he actually became king. And in that time, he was on the run from the current king, had kind of a band of outlaws with him, very dependent on God for shelter, for food. And even in the palace, when we seem to have all the things that we would want, we still want things. He looks out, sees a beautiful woman, not his, actually the wife of one of the soldiers that was fighting for him right then, and he takes her. Let's drop back down. Shifting back into child's pose for a time of confession. Maybe like David, we've sinned. Romans 3:23 says all have sinned and come short of God's glory, or God's standard, his holiness. But the important thing is that, like David, we need to repent and confess that. 1 John 1:9 says if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just, not only to forgive our sins, which he does, but also to cleanse us. Take some time here to search your heart. Time for a prayer of confession. And let's come up to all fours. We're going to take that right knee, drawing it forward by the right hand. Now we're going to tiptoe those toes towards the left, sinking the hips back. We want that rear leg to have the front of the leg to the mat. If you need to, you can take a block or 2 blocks or however many blocks or a pillow and sit on it to make it easier. We don't want to feel a tension in the knee from this. We want everything to be happening at the hip. We've got a bent leg or bent foot, and we're going to hinge forward. Maybe even stacking our hands and coming down if that's comfortable, or using blocks there. But that rear leg, we want the front of the leg at the mat. No pain to the knee, just to the hip, easing off if we do feel that pain. Returning to our equal racial breath if we've left it. Inhaling deeply, exhaling fully. Feeling a good release in the hip here. Ecclesiastes 5:15 says, naked a man is born, and that we leave with nothing. We can't take it with us, can we? All that stuff doesn't matter when you think that any funeral director and embalmer coroner would confirm that people leave with nothing. When John D. Rockefeller, who was one of the richest men in our country's history, died, his accountant was asked, how much did he leave? And the accountant replied, everything. With that in mind, what is it that we're clinging on to that seems so important that we just need to let go of? What can we do to find the freedom of contentment? And we can ease out of this, pushing off on that rear toe, lifting, coming back to all fours, and then drawing that right knee forward, tiptoeing those toes over. Just the opposite leg, whichever one you haven't done. All right, that rear leg, we've got the front of the leg in contact with the mat, elevating with blocks if we need to. Flexed foot, feeling this in the hips, not the knee. Not only is it true, the old adage that we can't take it with us, but we are not our things.
They don't define who we are. In Luke 12:15, Jesus warns of greed. He lets us know that we are not defined by our things. When heaven looks at us, we're not just the man with the nice suit, the woman with the nice house, the kid with the new bike. Heaven sees our heart. When our shepherd looks at us, he sees our compassion, our kindness, our generosity. Those are the things that heaven cares about. Much more important to spend time enriching that relationship with the Lord than building up thing after thing. And we can ease back up out of this.
Let's open up to the long edge of the mat. You might want to grab some blocks. We're going to come into a seated straddle. Sitting to the front of the tailbone, drawing those toes towards us and easing forward. We can come here, coming to our place between easy and hard.
Listening to those signals that happen in our body.
We might be feeling pain,
Which says back off. Maybe we're not feeling anything.
and that's going to say come deeper into the stretch.
We might find that the longer we are in this pose, the more we can deepen it. And every exhale is an opportunity to deepen. We're inhaling a count of 5 or 6, exhaling a count of 5 or 6.
And we can ease back up out of this. Setting those blocks aside if you'd like. Actually, keep a block. We're going to come back to all fours. I want us to create an L with both hands, wrapping it around that block, bringing the left knee underneath of the left hip. Then we're going to take our right foot, drawing it up next to the torso, and you can kind of work that to be next to you. Let's take that rear leg, finding a place that we've got a nice good stretch of that hip flexor. We want to make sure that this front leg has the knee directly over the heel, and then we can either keep the hands up or we can come down to a block. Maybe you would like to advance by coming to the floor. Wherever we can feel this nice stretch of the groin in lizard, but staying in alignment here. Breathing. Inhaling 5, exhaling 5. And now we have a choice either to stay right here, or we can lift that rear leg, extending that right arm, drawing it back, finding the ankle, and getting a little stretch to the quadricep. Breathing. You can add a twist if you'd rather look behind you, either option. And we can release that. Let's draw that right leg back, moving this block over towards the right, creating that L with the hands, drawing our left foot up, placing that knee directly over the heel, coming back till we feel a nice stretch in this hip flexor, and then either keeping our arms up if we feel a good stretch here, coming down to the block, maybe all the way to the floor. We've done a lot of moving since our initial setup, so let's just double check that supportive foot on the left, making sure that we've got the knee in line with the heel. Breathing and feeling a nice stretch here. Opening, releasing, and then either staying here or extending that left arm, lifting the rear leg, reaching behind, either coming into a rotation or keeping our gaze forward. your choice. And remember, we don't have to find that leg. We can stay right here. Another option is to grab a yoga strap and give a pull to that leg to help us access it. And we can release. Bring those hands back to a supportive position. Let's move that block out of the way. We're going to come back down to the forearms, taking the hands together, pushing back, coming into dolphin, pressing the forearms into the mat, heels towards the floor, head hanging down, tailbone floating to the ceiling. Breathing. We're in an inversion here, which is also good for the lymphatic system. There's these one-way valves, and inverting can help to get the lymph moving. And let's drop those knees. We're going to grab both blocks. Coming into some extension here. As we come into our restorative portion of our session, let's take one block, putting it behind us like a pillow. The other block is going to run along the spine. If you've never done a restorative fish, keep this block low. But if you'd like to advance, we can bring it up here. We're going to sit in front of that block, knees bent, backing up until we find the center of the spine with the block. And we want to line up vertebrae by vertebrae, making sure we stay nice and centered. As the head comes back, make sure that you're able to find that block for the support of the neck. And then we can choose either to just open up those arms or to keep them close to the side. If you'd like to advance, you can also extend the legs out. Or we just let go. This is a pose that's going to reverse all the damage that gets done when we spend too much time over our phones, over the books. Even just things like cooking will throw our spine into flexion. Our culture just really puts our spine into a lot of flexion, and this is going to reverse that damage. Because this is a restorative pose, it means that we're not pushing, pulling, twisting, reaching. We're letting go. We're allowing the blocks to do all of the work here. The more you can let go, the more the benefit to you will be. Every exhale, see if you can just sink a little bit more. When we let go and decide to say, I shall not want, allowing our shepherd to be our everything, what is it that we gain? We gain an anchor in the storms of life, something to hold on to, hope. We gain the Holy Spirit, which not only convicts of sin, but also comforts us in difficult times, gives us guidance. We gain an eternity in heaven after death. We don't need to have that fear of what will happen if I die. We can know it's a better situation than where we are right now. We're given grace to cover every sin. That new start that we need. David found places in his life that he needed that second chance, that new start. We do too. God offers that to us. And this Almighty God, this creator of the universe, hears us when we pray, when we talk to him. So much to gain when we let go of the material, letting go of the things we don't have. Now as we move out of this pose, we're going to draw the arms closer to the body to a supportive position with the elbows, with the hands. If the legs were extended, we're going to bring them to that bent position. Once we feel some good support here, we're going to gently lift the head. We do want to ease out of our restorative fish pose, walking ourselves up. You can set those blocks aside. And let's come onto the backs, drawing the knees into the chest, rocking that out, finding neutral in the back once more before we move into some rotation. Let's extend that right leg up, extending the left leg out. And then we're just gonna take the right leg all the way over to the left, maybe choosing to place it in a block, on a block. We're gonna rotate, opening those shoulders, taking a peek at that opposite hand. Every exhale, an opportunity to deepen this. Letting go. If we'd like to advance this, we can add a dragon's tail by lifting that bottom leg, taking the right hand, finding the ankle. I just want to feel open here and really enjoy this twist. Bringing out the abdominal organs like the liver, the kidneys, the ovaries. Inhaling 5 or 6, exhaling 5 or 6. And let's take that right hand over to the right leg, drawing the knees to the chest, finding neutral once more before we rotate to the other side. Extending our left leg up, extending our right leg out, taking that left leg over towards the right, maybe choosing to take that leg to the block, squaring our shoulders towards the mat, extending and opening those arms, taking our gaze towards the left. Option to stay here or to kick up that back leg, finding it, coming into that dragon tail for an additional stretch to the quadriceps. Everybody breathing. Not all moving is yoga. Yoga involves a focus on the breath. It's mind-body. I was once in a class, a yoga class, and someone who had never been to a gym or done workouts outside of yoga said that she was so shocked. She walked into a gym and she said, people just put on their headphones and just start running and there's no thought at all. And well, but that's kind of true. You tend to just put on your headphones and go for it for 30 minutes when you're doing a lot of cardio. This is different. We're thinking about where we feel this, what we feel, focused on the breath. Yoga is more than just strengthening to the muscles, which it is. With these isometric holds we do like in the lunge, but it's much more than that. It's gonna help our hormones, our mind can think more clearly, gain control of our emotions. We're getting tools that help us through the day, and we're hopefully just being able to feel better in the back. Do that good spinal warm up where we rotate the spine, we extend the spine, we get lateral flexion in the spine. Taking the head back to neutral, grabbing that left leg, drawing the knees back in towards the chest. God calls us to rest. He also says in Psalm 23 that He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads us beside still waters. He restores our soul. Let's come into a time of stillness, extending our legs towards the corners of the mat, doing any fidgeting or wiggling that we need to do to be able to really find that stillness and let go. Maybe we need to place a pillow underneath of our knees to support the back. And draw our hands to the sides, taking our last purposeful breath of today. Inhaling big, exhaling fully, and then just letting go. Letting our breath feel natural, nothing forced. Softening the shoulders, allowing them to melt into the floor. If there's something we're carrying today, let's release it. Let's release it in a prayer of supplication. Supplication is a big word. It just talks about the prayer of, it's our requests. Those things that are on our mind, we're told not to worry about, but to pray about them. Philippians says that. So pray about those things that are bothering you.
Pray for the people in your life who are hurting. Softening the neck, the jaw, allowing the lips to feel soft, cheekbones to soften, softening the space around the eyes, those crinkles where we smile, space between the eyebrows and all across the forehead. Noticing all the passageways in the ears, the top of the head. Softening the whole top of the body, the whole back of the body, the upper right arm, the lower right arm. Allowing the last bit of tension to just ease out those fingertips. Softening the upper left arm, the lower left arm. Easing out that hand. Noticing the strength of the rib cage protecting our heart. Are we holding something in our heart that we need to release? Bitterness, unkindness, hurt. Let that go. Take a moment to imagine your heart being filled with peace, love, joy. Allowing your hips to fully sink. Knowing that God calls us to moments of rest, to pauses in our day. Allowing the legs to feel heavy. Noticing the top of the legs, both calves, the left ankle, the right ankle, tops of the feet, bottom of the right foot, bottom of the left. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now we can wiggle the fingers and toes, maybe opening and closing those palms, drawing the knees in towards the chest, and coming to a seated position. Thank you for practicing with me today.